Welcome to the NBW Ministries podcast, advancing the clear, accurate, and urgent gospel message. Your host, Dr. J.B. Hixson, is an author and pastor who provides commentary and insights on current events through the lens of Scripture. Dr. Hixson interacts with various experts on cultural, theological, and political issues while proclaiming God's Word to a world in desperate need of the truth. If you enjoy today's podcast, be sure to forward it to others. And now, here's your host, J.B. Hixson.
Well, good morning, folks. My name is Morgan Hixson. Contrary to the voice you just heard, you are not going to be hearing Dr. Hixson just yet. We will be getting to him and his interview with Joe Hawkins. They're going to be talking about the Luciferian conspiracy and exposing the Luciferian conspiracy this morning. It's going to be a very exciting discussion. But I wanted to hop on here real quick and just do an introduction for this bonus podcast on today, Monday, December 8th, 2025. Now, many of you have hopefully already listened to Dr. Hixson this morning, or at least partially. His Bible study message should have gone out from yesterday morning, this morning already. But in addition to that, we decided we'd give you a bonus podcast this Monday as well, just to sort of bless your timeline and give you more content at work, on your drives, whatever the case may be. Christmas shopping, maybe. And I don't want to make any promises, and of course I don't know the future for sure, but if all goes according to plan, there will be another bonus podcast featuring Joe Hawkins on a week from today as well. And you'll probably hear me then as well. Now, I know what some of you may be wondering, Morgan, if you are not actually in this interview between Dr. Hixson and Joe Hawkins, why are you introing it? And that is a very good question. Thank you for asking. And my answer to that would be, my father, the good Dr. Hixson, asked me to do the intro for this and probably next week's bonus podcast as well. Now, why would such a thing be done in this unprecedented, uncanny event? That's beyond me to know for sure. If you wanted my speculation, which some of you may not, but I'm the one in control now, so I'm going to go ahead and give it. I would say that, Dr. Hixson has been doing Not by Works Ministries for a long time now. He's getting up there. I would not call him ancient, but it wouldn't be totally inaccurate to say so. And he's just not quite as energetic. He's not quite as spunky as he once used to be. And so it is possible that he just is slowing down. He doesn't have it anymore. And so he reached out to the most handsome, the most exuberant, the most strapping young man in the NBW Ministries employment and asked me to pick up the slack, which of course I'm happy to do. I'm very loving and I'm very humble and I'm very gracious like that. So yeah. And that would be my speculation. But of course, there's no way to know for sure. You can send Dr. Hixson an email and ask him if you wish. But enough yapping from me. Hopefully, you will enjoy this discussion. I'm certainly looking forward to it. At the time of recording this intro, I actually have not listened to it yet. But I know Joe is always a really informed guest. He's a really smart individual. I love talking to him. I love listening to him. And my dad, he's okay too, I suppose. So this will be a really good topic and exciting to dig into it. So without further ado, here is my father, Dr. J.B. Hixson, and Joe Hawkins talking about exposing the Luciferian Agenda.
And today we're going to talk about the topic of Luciferianism. And it still kind of blows my mind that people, they don't understand what that is and they've never heard that term before. So I'm sure that somebody's going to come across this podcast and they're going to say, oh, what is this Luciferianism and what does that mean? And I want to read real quick from this great book right here, Spirit of the Antichrist, Volume 1, The Gathering Cloud of Deception. And it was written by this fellow named J.B. Hixson. And I'm not going to read much from it. I do have one sentence, actually, I'm just going to read from it. And it's history as we know it is not the truth. And that is probably one of the most profound statements in this book because it's so true. It definitely makes me think of the famous quotes, history is written by the victors. Mm-hmm. And there's some other variations of that quote, like the victor will never be asked if he told the truth. And history will be kind to me, for I intend to write it. And in today's society, we see truth being rewritten all around. You have and we actually in our Sunday school class or Wednesday night class recently, we talked about relative truth and how your truth is not equal to my truth. And that's kind of how the world defines it. The world can't even define what a woman is anymore these days. They can't define what what gender they are. It's whatever truth that they believe in. But we ultimately know that there's one truth, and that truth is Jesus Christ. And you do a wonderful job of breaking this down in your book. And I'm going to read, and you have it quoted here in chapter 3 from Psalm 2, verses 2 and 3. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bonds in pieces and cast away their cords from us. And that comes from Psalm 2, verses 2 and 3. And that verse explains perfectly what I think we see going on today with this Luciferian agenda. And I want to just give it over to you, JB. What is Luciferianism, and why is it such a relevant term for today?
Well, I never tire, Joe, of talking about this subject because it's just really changed my life back nearly 20 years ago when, I was already well established in ministry. I had written a book or two in the theology realm, was teaching full time at a college and seminary. But my eyes were opened to the reality that things are not really as they appear, and that there really is a hidden agenda. There's an unseen realm, and that almost nothing we've been taught about history is as it actually appears. And I owe a great debt of gratitude to my good friend Shane, who was a colleague of mine and still one of my dearest friends to this day, and to whom I dedicated that first volume that you just talked about. And since then, it's been a journey of just constantly going down the rabbit hole, uncovering rocks and turning over rocks to see what I can find that I've been lied to about. And so the best way to define Luciferianism, I think I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's all right, and just show a quote here, because sometimes people will say, Luciferianism, did you make that up? That kind of thing. And I'm like, no, not at all. So this is Albert Pike. And he, of course, is a Satan-worshiping 33rd degree Mason, kind of the father of Freemasonry, some people say, American Freemasonry. He said, that which we say to a crowd is we worship a God, but it's the God one adores without superstition. To you, sovereign grand inspectors general, we say this, that you may repeat it to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degrees. And listen to what he says. The Masonic religion should be, by all of us initiates of the highest degrees, maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. Yes, Lucifer is God. Lucifer, God of light and God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil. So that is exactly just the opposite of what you read from King David in Psalm 2. And so Luciferianism is the belief that Satan is the hero and God is the enemy, and that Satan is trying to take back control of this world from God. And it's their name for themselves, and obviously we don't have time to go into all the detail, but in my books I clearly cite how they've called themselves Luciferians, going way, way back. Of course, they get that term Lucifer from Isaiah 14. It's another name for Satan. And they believe, again, that in the Garden of Eden, Satan is the hero and God is the enemy. And so when Satan orchestrated his coup attempt in heaven, which, of course, was easily defeated by Almighty God, he then took a third of the angels with him and set his sights on the earth. And so the Luciferian conspiracy, like all conspiracies, just involves two or more groups or people working together. So this is, my simple diagram of the Luciferian conspiracy. Satan working hand in puppet with evil celestial beings and human accomplices, human co-conspirators through the centuries, through the millennia, really. that constitutes the conspiracy. And if you kind of break it down in detail, the earthly component of it has really three primary tiers or levels. At the top tier, you've got the top level Luciferians, who are not household names to most people. Most people would not know these people. They are the ones that pray directly to Satan and get their marching orders from him. They pray to him the way you and I pray to God, and he communicates to them. They're very demonically controlled, satanically controlled. They're the ones offering sacrifices to Satan, drinking blood, that kind of thing. But then below them, they've got a number of avenues that they use to try to orchestrate. Ultimately, what they're striving for is a one world political, religious, and economic system, precisely as we read about in the Bible. And so they use secret societies, they use business and finance realms, they use politics, military and intelligence groups, world religions, policy and influence groups, all of it working together. Not to say that everybody in any one of these entities is a witting participant in the conspiracy. Many of them are on a need-to-know basis. Many of them don't realize that they're part of a much darker agenda. But yeah, ultimately, Joe, the goal is for Satan to take over this world. And one last thing before I throw it back to you, it's always kind of struck me as odd that so many otherwise conservative Christians, biblically smart Christians, kind of react and kind of stiff arm me when I talk about the Luciferian conspiracy, because if you know your Bible, you know that it's a spiritual battle from the beginning. You know that it's going to be culminating in this cosmic battle during the 70th week of Daniel, where Satan indwells the Antichrist and tries to rule the world. I mean, we know that biblically and theologically. What we fail to recognize many times, and this was me prior to kind of waking up to all this and starting to study it, we fail to realize that reality from the Bible has very real implications for day-to-day life, especially in America, especially in these great last days. We are seeing some, amazing, evidences of this conspiracy reaching a pinnacle and getting closer and closer, as you've written about and you've talked about, to the beast system. Now, we won't be here when the beast system is ultimately rolled out, but we may be here when the good portion of the infrastructure is put in place if the Lord tarries. So, yeah, that's the Luciferian conspiracy in a nutshell.
Yeah, and thanks for that. So, I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I think you've said this before, that there's not a Luciferian behind every tree, right? And not everybody that's involved in any one of these groups knows everything about it, especially those on that bottom tier. Mm-hmm. It's funny because I was on with Mondo just the other day, and my little, I have a lapel pin on my jacket that's a Prophecy Recon lapel pin, and somebody in the comments, somebody had sent me a message, and they said the guest that Mondo has on, he's a 33rd degree Mason. He's a Freemason. I'm like, just based off of the pen, but there are those, and I've learned that people that come out of those societies, just like we're not here to talk about the New Apostolic Reformation though, but I'm doing a lot of studies on that. But I've learned that people that come out of these secret societies and these groups like that, they tend to go on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. They don't want to be deceived again to the point that they are hypercritical about everything. And that's what we see happen when these people come out of it. Now, when it comes to the Luciferian ideology that's in the world today, do we see it being influenced by the modern culture, the entertainment, or education in some form or fashion?
Without question, yeah, 100%. So it would be helpful, I think, to talk about kind of where we are in the process. So, of course, I believe the earth is 6,000 years old. Human history is 6,000 years old. And Satan, ever since he got kicked out of heaven, has been aspiring and conspiring to bring about the one world system. Of course, God's the ultimate arbiter of the timetable, and so everything has to happen according to God's plan. But absolutely, we are in the last part of the last days, I believe, and Satan is getting closer than ever before. And all eyes right now of the Luciferians are on the United States of America. Brief history. when this country was started, which it was started by many of the founding fathers who were Freemasons and part of a sort of a satanic influence over there in Europe that goes back centuries before America, and they were sent over to the New World to establish a beachhead for the New World Order. And I'm talking now about the mid to second half of the 18th century. Now, of course, the original Puritans and Pilgrims that came over in the early 17th century, they were all God-fearing, Christian people trying to, seek religious freedom and serve the Lord. But by the time you get to 120 years later or so, or 150 years later, the founding of this country, there was definitely a hidden agenda there. And so while it is true that many of our founding fathers were Christians and did have our best interest at heart, many of them did not. And so that's why I push back a little bit at when people cherry pick quotes from founding fathers that make them all sound like God-fearing, born-again, godly people when they really weren't. But in any event, going back to that time period, they thought they could have a New World Order beachhead here in this continent. But unfortunately, because the Christians had a 150-year head start, the Spirit of God was moving. There was already God had other plans to use this great nation of ours, which you've served, by the way. Thank you for your service, and many others. He intended and is using this to further the gospel and to make a difference in this sin-stricken world. So they really underestimated the power of the Spirit of God and the power of the 150-year head start that the early Christians had. And so it was much harder for them than they thought it would be to really establish a country that has a lot of sort of Luciferian ideology in it. Now, I might hasten to add that the constitutional aspect of this country is pretty awesome. I mean, it was patriotic built. It was had some good principles in it. But again, they don't necessarily worry too much about the system of law that they build into place. They meaning the bad actors, the bad guys in the founding of this country, because they know they're just going to break it anyway. So I'm not disparaging, the Constitution. I think it's one of the greatest documents next to the Bible in the history of mankind. But the point is, their agenda was delayed. And by the time you get to the year 1900, in the early part of the 20th century, they realized that it was not going to be an easy battle to get control of this country. So they set out in earnest at that point, so we're talking 125 years ago, to take control of the media, as you just mentioned, academia, higher education, medicine, the pharmaceutical industry, every aspect of American culture. And they're in it for the long haul. And they knew the easiest way to get America to get on board with the New World Order and the one world system was to get us to do so willingly, to climb on the trains willingly. And so what do we see over the last 125 years? We see a marked, profound decline in morality, cultural shifts, the apostate church that I just wrote about in my latest book, things like that. And I think it's gotten to the point where we're at a tipping point. They've bragged about and emphatically proclaimed in their writings and in leaked documents and in other groups, if you pay attention, about destroying this country. They know they've got to get rid of America before they can usher in the one world system. And so this is the one country standing in their way. And that's why I really say that all eyes right now within the Luciferian agenda are on America. It really is sort of ground zero for these last days events.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly with all of that. And, and me and you have had many conversations over the last, year or so. And, and I think that's why we're such kindred spirits, because we kind of align on a lot of this. So many people, when it comes to the right left, paradigm, they pick one side or the other, and they don't realize that those lines have been blurred and they're actually together. And that's where this Luciferian agenda kind of meets. It meets right there in the middle. They're here to put this plan together, and it's ultimately to fulfill the lie of Genesis 3:15, not necessarily to worship Satan. Satan doesn't want to be worshiped. He can care less if you worship him. He just doesn't want you to worship God. Mm-hmm. He wants you to worship yourself. And that's the the basis of Satanism, right? The law of Satanism is do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. Just do whatever you want to do. Continue to do it, and that's the decline that we've seen in society, especially like you've talked about recently. I believe that you and oh goodness, the pastor up there in the area of Colorado, you just had him on, Brad.
Brad Maston. Yeah.
Yeah, Brad Maston. You and him just did a podcast recently on what you call it? Edutainment.
Edutainment. Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
I mean, it was great. It talks, and I'm going to have to get him onto the program, by the way, after that. I mean, I've listened to him, on your program several times, but I really appreciated that program because it hit the nail on the head, and we see this vast decline in morality. And it's all boils down to self-worship. People want to worship themselves, and that's exactly what Satan wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to your question about the media, I kind of gave kind of a longer preface to that question than maybe I should have. But the bottom line is absolutely the media is a key branch of Luciferianism, and they are doing mind control. There's a reason they call it programming, right? And we're seeing, foretelling of events coming up, the whole Luciferian credo of they have to tell you what they're going to do before they do it, but you don't really recognize it until after it happens. And then you go back and you're like, oh yeah, that's why, 6 months before 9/11, there was an episode of The Lone Gunman that talked about Middle Eastern terrorists flying commercial aircraft into the Twin Towers and causing them to crash. I see now why that plot that seemed kind of weird at the time was given to that primetime television show, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's sad the way even most Christians are easily deceived. We need discernment. 1 John 4:1. We need to test the spirits. And another big part of their agenda is this blending, this merging of the church, conservative evangelicalism, with politics, so that we're so wrapped up in the right-left paradigm, we completely ignore the right-wrong paradigm, and we're willing to support a party and a platform that is pro-abortion, pro-LGBTQ, and things like that. And yes, they are. People can save me the email. Don't send me the email and tell me, well, the Republican Party's not for those things. Absolutely it is. And they even changed their platform on abortion recently. So it's the media is a big part of it, Joe.
100% agree with you, and I'll be sure to link your email in the show notes so that everybody has that. Just messing, by the way. So let me make sure that we don't have anything else here. So I think it's going to wrap it up for today. We did talk about a few things that some of you guys may find a little out there. And if you thought that was out there, wait until you tune in the next time I have JB on when we talk about cryptids. And that's going to be a wonderful conversation. But if you, and I just want to turn it back over to you, JB. Please tell everybody how they can reach out to you, get on your website, your books, your store, any upcoming events that you have. Feel free to share anything that you would like.
Yeah, so I would encourage folks, to check us out on the web at notbyworks.org. They can also download the free app, NBW Ministries, in the App Store or Google Play Store. If this whole idea of the Luciferian conspiracy is new to you, like it was to me 20 years ago, I highly recommend you check out my 3-volume set, Spirit of the Antichrist, Volumes 1 and 2, and Spirit of the False Prophet, Volume 3. And it lays it out there. I mean, it is a deep dive with, bibliographic citations over 100 pages, and it just walks you through all the lies that we've been told, particularly as it relates to U.S. history with a little bit of world history in there. So folks can go to spiritoftheantichrist.org, spiritoftheantichrist.org, and they can kind of see the table of contents of each volume. They can read the preface, get familiar with the content, and see if that's something for them. It's available in print, in Audible books, Audiobook, or in Kindle and digital book. Thanks for letting me kind of talk about one of my favorite subjects today, Joe.
Absolutely. We're definitely going to have you back on.
This has been the NBW Ministries podcast with Dr. J.B. Hixson. You can learn more about NBW by visiting notbyworks.org or through the free NBW Ministries app available in the App Store or Google Play Store. Thanks again for listening, and remember, it's not by works of righteousness we have done, but according to his mercy, he saved us. Titus 3, verse 5.